Hi everyone. I don't have a ton of time, so we're just gonna power through this book that I found. Look, I don't know if I upset Krampus, Jesus, or Santa Claus, but I ended up finding another book by Sung Byun, the guy that wrote The Gospel Pervaded by Power, called The Kingdom of Overcomers, which couldn't overcome a bunch of coffee that I spilled on it. So let's go ahead and read it. Looks like there's a preface, so we're gonna start with that. In a book titled The Holy Warning, the author stated the following words: "The majority of Christians in this generation do not know what it means to be truly reborn. And there are far too many who claim to be reborn without actually being so." Citation needed, right? There are too many who still live in sin and the greed of this world and think that they are born-again Christians. The responsibility for this lies largely on the false preachers. This is a great tragedy of this generation, a great danger. So this comes from, it looks like another Korean author. It appears that this was probably written in Korean. So I don't know if we can get a hold of this book, but I guess this is going to start us off for the mood. And it seems like The Mood is a book that is written for Christians to make them feel guilty about not being Christian enough or not the right flavor of Christian. Please remember, a lot of the Christians that are found in South Korea are more of the evangelical type, a little bit more leaning on the extreme. I remember one of my Korean friends told me not to go to any churches because they're not like the churches in the United States. The Christians here are crazy. That's what he said. And I told him, that's okay. I was raised in one of those crazy Christian cults, so it's probably stuff that I'm used to. And it seems like something that I would find, on some kind of Christian radio or something that would be sold at a bookstore in one of those super churches or the mega churches. I can never forget the first time I preached the contents of this book, The Kingdom of Overcomers. Our church was very small at that time, but I was invited to speak at a rather large church led by the chairman of our presbytery. All those who heard the challenging message I gave were shocked, yet greatly blessed. Wasn't this the same author that just kept patting himself on the back? I know. Somebody trying to be in charge of a bunch of people in an offshoot extreme religion that seems to have narcissistic qualities? Color me shocked. I know. But greatly blessed. A few days later, however, I received the following message from the presbytery chairman. Let's guess what this could be, so feel free to pause. What is the guess from the chairman? I'm going to guess that it's either going to be, our church is now totally changed and improved. Thank you so much for coming to speak. The power of the Holy Spirit has just put it on our hearts to thank you and invite you to come speak again. Or, thanks for the message, but you really upset a lot of our patrons, therefore do not come back, but thank you. Those are my guesses. Feel free to pause and write yours. Pastor Byun, you have stolen the hearts of our church members with your one sermon. The members think very highly of you. What you have preached is right. It is the biblical truth. But who would keep coming out to a church if you preach like that? Who would be left in our congregations? This sounds like, who are they? You guys know some of those mega preachers or those kind of big tent kind of revivalist preachers? The ones that say things that seem to be really controversial, and their churches themselves seem to be really controversial. And I forget their names, but they had a bunch of issues when it came time for the pandemic. That they were refusing to get vaccinated, refusing to social distance, refusing to wear masks, all of that stuff. This sounds like something they would say, that we really liked what you had to say, but it's going to isolate or alienate a lot of people. You win more congregates with honey instead of brimstone, that kind of thing. That's exactly what this sounds like. See, I told you, this is the same kind of Christian. I was shocked to see that a pastor could be so far from the truth. He was more concerned with how many members would attend his church than the safety of people's souls. Sadly, there are more than a few of these pastors today. This is reading like a chick tract right now. This is a quote from Matthew 9:36. Seeing the people, he felt compassion for them, because they were distressed and dispirited, like sheep without a shepherd. This is how I honestly feel when I see the church and Christians of this day and age. That is why I hurried to finish the manuscript for this book just a few hours after finishing another book, Christianity Alone is the Way and the Truth, and the life. Christianity alone was written to effectively evangelize to non-believers. Oh, we got to get that. This kingdom of overcomers, however, was written to awaken the nominal Christians in our churches and lead them to salvation. All right, see, I clocked it. This current generation has darkened so much that it requires evangelism not only out in the world, but also in the church. I thus hope that readers may utilize these 2 books to lead many souls to salvation. This is some kind of quote. I don't know what it's from. Lord, have mercy on the church and Christians of this generation. Through this small book, would you awaken the nominal Christians that have become the majority in the church? Save them, Lord. I pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Oh, okay, it's in italics because it's a prayer. And that seems to be it. Like 6, 7. So there's a table of contents, and it says that the beginning here is supposed to be on page 5. And then chapter 1, Christians are overcomers, starts on page 21. But there's nothing that's like a foreword or it's like chapter 0? Okay, well, I know we didn't just read a bunch of pages. So we just read pages 5 and 6. It looks like we're going to have 3 chapters other than whatever this little chunk is here. And the 3 chapters are Christians are overcomers. Overcomers have received a promise. Heaven can only be entered by overcomers. So we'll see how these kind of pan out. I guess we'll finish the... Was this like a preface that was interrupted by a table of contents? I have no idea. This comes from Luke 13:23-27. And someone said to him, Lord, are there just a few who are to be saved? And he said to them, strive to enter through the narrow door, for many, I tell you, will seek to enter and will not be able. Once the head of the house gets up and shuts the door, and you begin to stand outside and knock on the door, saying, Lord, open up to us. Then he will answer you and say to you, I do not know where you are from. Then you will begin to say, we ate, we drank in your presence, and you taught in our streets. And he will say, I tell you, I do not know where you are from. Depart from me, you all evildoers. It's a bit shady for God, an omnipotent being, to say such a snarky thing, right? He knows all, but then he's going to say, I don't know you. What a burn from God, honestly. That's a pretty good roast. I'll give him that. In this passage, in Luke, we see someone asking Jesus, Lord, will those who are saved be few? Jesus answers him, strive to enter. Yeah, we just read this. Thanks for telling us what we just read, Pastor. So we can see another mention of this narrow door in the book of Matthew. Enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small, and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it. Matthew 7:13 and 14. Jesus clearly stated that there would be few to find their way through the narrow gate. This too shows that there will be few to receive salvation. Those who are saved, namely those who will enter heaven, are few. Some may wonder just how few. The answer, according to various spiritual experiences, may shock you, as it is a percentage far lower than what you would have likely imagined. Well, what percentage would you imagine? Just assuming all of this is true, that God is real, Jesus is real, all you have to do is call upon him to be saved. And then your name is written in the book of life, and when you die, you go to heaven. Assuming that you aren't somebody like me who was Christian and then left the religion and became an atheist, assuming that you stay Christian and you're otherwise just a lukewarm or nominal Christian like the pastor is speaking to, I would still say that most of those people would go to heaven, right? I think that's kind of sneaky to say all you need is faith, and then you have faith, and then, well, you didn't have enough faith or the right amount of faith, or you didn't have faith plus works and all this other stuff. And it says it's few, but I find it's more interesting that it says the answer according to various spiritual experiences, not the answer according to the Bible, the scriptures, the answer according to Jesus, the answer according to different places mentioned in the Bible when God is asked or whatever. It's the answer according to things that are just trust me, bro, and roll with it. Interesting. While I do not deny the validity of spiritual experiences, I am wary of how inaccurate they generally are. Okay, Pastor, you and I, we get it. During the early years of our church, I would often lay hands on people during prayer, and many of them would fall into a trance. They would have these spiritual encounters during this trance. They would have spiritual encounters with Jesus and go on spiritual journeys to see heaven and hell. What one can see and learn from these trances are far more inaccurate than we think. Wow, I wonder why. I wonder why. Spiritual encounters during near-death experiences, however, are relatively more accurate. How do you know? How do you... According to what? What are we basing this against? How do you know? He better tell us. He better not pull like a Turek and just say, just roll with it. All right. This is because these people who are actually declared dead at hospitals and then see the afterlife and then miraculously come back to life. Okay, so that's why we can rely on them and they're more accurate because the person was lacking oxygen to their brain. That's why. So we know it's going to be true because the person's brain was dying. Fantastic. Okay, Pastor, I get you. Of these near-death testimonies, the most reliable ones, how do we know which ones are reliable? If they're all reliable. All tell us that the number of those who saved is shockingly low as the amount of oxygen getting to their brain. In Howard Pittman's Placebo, we can read about how Pittman, a Southern Baptist for 35 years, had an incredible encounter as he was at the brink of death. Here's an excerpt from that book. I've got to do a different voice because we're reading a kind of a long excerpt. Suddenly we came to the most beautiful place. This place looked like a tunnel, a roadway, a valley, of some sort of highway. Walking in this tunnel or along that roadway, or valley, or whatever, was what happened to be human beings. I asked my escort who they were. He told me they are the saints going home. These were the departed spirits of the Christians who had died on earth, and they were going home. Each of these saints was accompanied by at least one guardian angel, and some had a whole host of angels with them. I found that only authorized spirits were allowed in that tunnel, with authorized having quotation marks and in bold. When my escort had finished explaining to me about my homeward trip of the saints, I started into that tunnel. The angel stopped me and told me that we had to travel alongside the tunnel and not inside of it. I traveled therefore parallel with but outside the tunnel where the saints were. At first I was disappointed that I was not permitted to travel in the tunnel with the saints, but the disappointment was eased when I was told that we were going to the same place they were going. When we arrived before the gates, instead of allowing me to enter, the angel stationed me before the gates, slightly to one side. He instructed me to stay there and watch as the saints were permitted to enter into heaven. As the saints were allowed into heaven, I noticed a strange thing. They were permitted to enter only one at a time. This is all in bold. I was so impatient to get my request before God that I missed the whole point of what I saw. This point was so important that the Holy Spirit told me himself. I watched the 50 saints enter heaven, but at the point that I missed was the time frame involved. It was explained to me that the same time that those 50 saints had died on earth, 1,950 other humans also died, or only 50 out of 2,000 made it into heaven. That other 1,950 were not there. Where were they? That was only 2.5% going to heaven. 97.5% did not make it. Is that representative of the entire world today? If so, 97.5% of the population of this world today is not ready to meet God. We are now in the time when the great majority of the churchgoers are only mouth professors and not heart professors. Okay. Well, again, it's interesting. Maybe we can check out the book. But back to the pastor. Less than 3%. Did you ever think it could be so low? I didn't think we could trust this guy and his near-death experience as, oh yeah, this is... Like, if my students, when I'm asking them to write an essay, if the citation was, I had an oxygen-deprived brain hallucination, or a hallucination of my oxygen-deprived brain told me this was going to happen, that's where I got these numbers from. I would say, I'm very sorry to hear that, but we need something that can be verified outside of your personal experience, or some, nice way to put it. But no, we can't take you hallucinating to be something that can end up in your essay, unless the essay is about hallucinations and you're including an anecdote. I never imagined that there would be so few people that were saved. This is why, although I consider Pittman's testimony a good reference, I did not fully believe in its accuracy. Wow, so the pastor is just saying these types of events, the near-death experiences, they're pretty accurate. But this just seemed like kind of low, so I wasn't really sure how accurate it was. That's it. This pastor is just trying to figure out the spiritual world based on his personal opinion. We're just getting vibes. I thought they were against the New Age stuff, but here we are. The percentage was far lower than I thought, but I finally believed in its credibility when I read a different testimony by Bob Jones, who was known, of course, like I said, this is the same Christians, who was known in the Pentecostal movement as a living legend and the father of prophets. I don't know the Bob Jones voice. What can we do for the Bob Jones voice? I feel like I already wasted my Southern preacher voice, but we'll go a little deeper if we can. On August 7th, 1957, Bob Jones saw in a vision that with the rapid rise of homosexuality, there would be a spread of fatal disease. He also saw in that vision just how neglected the sanctity of life was, as he saw that there would come a time when women would be able to abort their child with a pill. These revelations at the time were quite groundbreaking. The next day, Satan appeared to Bob, threatening to kill him should he reveal Satan's plans, which God had shown him. It's bizarre. That's the only word for this. It's I don't know, it's reading like a bad RPG plot or something. Right? That the king is showing you something to stop this nefarious plot, and one of the people in charge of the plot is threatening to kill you if you try to stop them, and they're going to kill the king, and you have to be quiet, otherwise they're going to kill your family, but if you don't do anything about it, then your life will be spared, or something. It's weird. Bob did not believe that Satan had such power, so he shared this revelation with others. Shockingly, Satan kept his promise. Bob suffered from a ruptured artery, and he started to bleed from the mouth and the nose. His legs became stiff, and he felt a pain he could not describe. When Bob was hospitalized, the doctors gave him painkillers, and he was covering his face with a towel to keep the blood from spilling. Then, suddenly, the pain disappeared. He thought that the medicine must have started to work. But it was not the effect of the medicine. He was dead. Bob found himself in a tunnel of light with an angel of the Lord. He looked down at his own clothes that he was wearing, a brightly shining white gown. Immediately he received joy from the purity and peace that he could feel from the heavenly material. Must be a really good gown. But when he was allowed to see the other people that had died at the same time, that joy turned to sadness. Unfortunately, they were not wearing the same clothing of light. Instead, he saw 97% of the people fall into the depths of hell. That's a really specific number, isn't it? So if this book was written in 2017 about an event from 1975, and the other book, the placebo book, the first excerpt that I read, that was written in 1999. Could it be that one influenced the other? We know that a thing called source amnesia exists, where you learn something and then forget that you've learned it, and then later on this idea comes to you that you think came from you. You think it came out of your own creativity, or I guess you could think it came from God or something, but you just forgot you actually learned it somewhere else. So it could be that the 1999 book written by Pittman, that he actually could have read about the 97% thing from Bob Jones, or some document mentioning Bob Jones and the 97%. And so then when he had his near-death experience, that was the number that came. Or it could be that he wrote about that, and the person who wrote the 2017 book conflated them. This is Pastor Bjorn, the author of the book. When Pastor Jones was still alive, I had the privilege of meeting him during a conference he was leading in the U.S. Toward the end of our conversation, I asked him the following. Pastor, I had read before that when you died and you went before the gates of heaven, you saw that only 3% of people who had died would enter heaven. Was that low percentage just a reflection of the time, or is the number still accurate today? Okay, so this apparently was a thing that was at least well known in these circles about the 97%, which means that it's probably something Pittman heard, forgot about, and then he was influenced during his near-death experience, and that number just popped up during this near-death experience. Interesting. I mean, maybe they had actually witnessed heaven, but we know that source amnesia happens. We don't know that people go to heaven, so I'm just going to kind of err on the side of caution here. His answer, the Pastor Jones's answer, shocked me beyond belief. What I saw then was not 3%, it was 2%. And as for today, I do not even think it is 2%. I believe that we backtracked even more now. At that time, only 2% of the entire population were going to heaven. That is why I was brought back to life. Very humble, Pastor Jones. This percentage is, of course, referring to the entire world and not just those in the church. But even so, it is still far too small. Why are there so few people being saved? As you continue to read, you will be able to see why. You will also come to know just how one can participate in that small group of blessed people. Fantastic! So the guy who sings his own praises in his own book also talks about being one of the very, 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 very few who figured out the exact right way to be a Christian. Wow. Totally unexpected. Never could have guessed. Well, I hope that you guys had as much fun listening to it as I did not have fun reading it. And on that note, please feel free to leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. And in the details section, you can check out different ways to get in touch, like on Discord, Instagram, Twitter, and Threads, I guess, too, sometimes, and also Blue Sky. And if you guys are interested in Patreon to help kind of support what I do, then you can check out the link to Patreon there. And for as little as $1 a month, you can participate in the early release of the videos. We also have just different updates that you can check out. And at the end of each month, we do a live stream for patron members only. So pretty fun stuff. And you can also join as a free member and get some of those cool perks as well. But with all that being said, as always, thanks for listening.
In this unholy chapel, hear the whispers of the night, where demons sing praises with voices deep.